I'm doing, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. We are having a non-rain day. In fact, the sun is shining just strong enough out there. I had to shut my curtains because it was making one side of my face all shadowed and the other side washed out. So that's a good problem to have too much sunshine outside. Okay. So what do you have that you can offer the Lord today? A lot of times we tend to think in terms of what we don't have, what we don't know, why we can't, all those kinds of negative questions. I don't know if we ask often enough the question, what do I have that I can give to the Lord? And you might think you have nothing to offer the Lord, either in possessions or whatever. You might think that giving to the Lord is something for rich people or at least people with extra income to give. But today we're going to look at a story. It's a story about a lady who became a widow, a young widow, I'm guessing. It doesn't actually give you it doesn't give you her name. It doesn't give you her age. We just know that she's a widow and she's got two small boys living at home. So let's take a look at this story in Second Corinthians or Second Kings chapter 4. The widow's olive oil, I've called it. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha. Now, her husband was a prophet, and I don't want to say worked for, but we'll just put it in those terms. He did ministry with Elisha. Elisha, in a sense, I think would have been over him in authority. Elisha was the prophet of his day. He's one of the great prophets of the Old Testament. A lot of great stories come out of his life. So the wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead." And you know that he revered the Lord. So he was a godly man. He he gave himself to the Lord. He was a good man. But now his creditor is coming to take my two boys as his slaves. So in the Old Testament, if you fell into debt to somebody and you could not pay that debt back, one of the things that would happen is either you or your children would be taken as a form of a slave. It wasn't exactly like don't let African slavery in the Americas or the slavery's all over the world. Every culture of the world has practiced slavery. But I don't want you to get mixed up with a lot of times what's talked about today. You were not necessarily a permanent slave. Were opportunities to work your way out of the indebtedness and to free yourself. There was the year of Jubilee, which set slaves free. But in this case, you have these two boys. They're not even teenagers yet. That Hebrew word there does not even really mean teenager. It really does mean a boy or younger. So these guys, this would be like child labor. And this poor woman has been through a lot. She lost her husband probably as a young woman, because they would have started having children as soon as they could, and they're still young. So we know those details about what's going on. We know that they didn't have life insurance back in the day. They didn't have welfare. They didn't have social programs like we have today. And so she was having difficulty providing for the family because that's what he would have done. So she's in debt. She's in great debt. And she's crying out to Elisha, "Can you please help me? You know he was a godly man. He served you. He served under you. He served the Lord. He served under you. You know the situation. Can you help at all?" And I can just hear her pleading voice to Elisha. So let's pick up the story again. So Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, What do you have in your house? And she said, your servant has nothing there at all. Well, I do have a small jar of olive oil. Think about that. What do you have in your house? I really don't have anything. I don't have any food. I literally don't have any food. Oh, that's right. I have this small jar of olive oil. Olive oil would have been a very important cooking thing back in the day. Everybody had olive oil. Everybody used olive oil. It was a big product, a big part of, in a sense, of the food economy of the day. So she had just a little bit of olive oil. Basically, Elisha is going to tell her the Lord is going to do something with that olive oil. You need to give it up over to him. This little bit that you have, give it up and let him have it, and you will be amazed. Now, I don't want you to take this story too far. People make mistakes with scripture like that all the time. Elisha says, go around and ask all of your neighbors for empty jars. She didn't even have empty jars. The jars would have been much bigger than a small jar. They would have been more like jugs. And don't ask for just a few. I love that line. Don't ask for just a few. See, God is about to do something in her life. What Elijah is telling her is don't be prepared for God to do small things. You might like she's so unimportant in one sense. We aren't even given her name. She's just the wife of a man. We're not even given the man's name. She's just the wife, the unnamed wife of the unnamed man, right? Don't ask for just a few. Don't plan on God doing little things all the time in your life. Just for once, trust him for something a little bit bigger. That's what I'm hearing Elisha say to her. Don't ask for just a few, ask for a lot. Then go inside, shut the door behind you and your sons, and pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side. So the small jar, out of the small jar, she has to pour it into the big jar. So obviously, normally the small jar is only going to fill a little bit of the big jar. But not only does the small jar fill the big jar, the big jug, it fills the next one, and then it fills the next one. And it just kept coming, and it filled the next one and the next one until we read that she ran out of jars. Elijah said, don't think small. Ask for a lot. Oops. Ask for a lot of jars. So she left him and she shut the door behind her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring and pouring and pouring. And when all the jars were full, she said to her son, bring me another one. But he replied, there is not a jar left. Then the oil stopped flowing out of the little jar. So she went and told the man of God, and he said this. Remember, I told you, olive oil was a big economy back in the day. He told her, go sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left. You get that? Elisha challenged her to give what little she had to the Lord because she had this big need. The Lord not only met the big need, but he also gave her money to live on. Now, this is not a lesson in health, wealth, and prosperity. If I just give the Lord $1, he'll give me $100. If I give the Lord $100, he'll give me $1,000. No, that's not what it's promising. This is a story that's meant to encourage our hearts that in our deepest need, we ought to go to the Lord and trust him with our deepest need. Sometimes that will involve uh, giving over to him our very lives. Sometimes it will mean giving over to him the very few possessions we might have, right? It's not a promise that if you give to God, he gives you 100 times more than you gave him. It's not that at all. It's all about trusting God with our lives, with our needs, with even the very things that we have? And can we trust him to do big things through little that we have so that he gets the glory? That's the point of the story. I hope that encourages your heart, encourages my heart. Lord willing, I hope to see you all on Monday, but between now and then, hope you have a good couple of days.